She looked at me with disdain, her voice dripping with contempt as she declared, "It's time you leave, old woman." But just moments before, my son had whispered his final wish, urging me to hold on to the home we had built together. I stood there, shattered, feeling the walls of my world close in, my heart heavy with betrayal, realizing I was being cast aside. Stick around till the very end and drop your city in the comments. I'd love to know where this story is reaching. If you want more emotional stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. The house felt unbearably cold and empty after Martin's funeral. I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, clutching the faded photograph of him as a boy, the one where he smiled without a care in the world. It was supposed to be a sanctuary for me now, a place where I would find comfort in the memories of my son. Instead, it had become a prison of silence and sorrow. The walls, once echoing with laughter and warmth, now seemed to close in, suffocating me with the weight of grief. Just as I was trying to steady my trembling hands, the sharp sound of the front door slamming shut jolted me. Lydia stormed in, her eyes cold and hard as she locked the door behind her. She didn't even glance my way before she snapped, "It's time you leave, old woman." The words hit me like a physical blow, shattering the fragile calm I had been clinging to. I blinked, unable to process what I had heard. What do you mean?" I managed to whisper, my voice cracking under the shock. Lydia's lips curled into a bitter smile, devoid of any warmth. "Martin made it clear before he died. He wanted this house to be ours, not a place for you to cling to your memories. You're a burden here, Clara. It's time you go." Her voice was sharp, final, like a judge delivering a sentence. I wanted to argue, to remind her of the countless times Martin had spoken about caring for me, but the words caught in my throat. The woman I had once welcomed into my home, who had been my daughter-in-law and part of our family, now looked at me as if I were a ghost, an unwelcome one at that. I sank back into the worn armchair, feeling the tears sting my eyes. How could Lydia be so cruel? Where was the compassion for a mother who had just lost her only son? This was not the family I had known. The warmth I had believed in was gone, replaced by hostility that I could never have imagined. The house, which had been filled with the sound of Martin's laughter and the scent of his favorite cologne, now felt alien and unwelcoming. The grief was a heavy cloak I wore, but it was Lydia's words that pierced deeper. I thought of Martin's last days, how he had insisted on certain things, how he had smiled at me with a quiet determination that I hadn't understood until now. There was something beneath Lydia's harshness, a secret she was hiding, one that I was determined to uncover. If Martin's dying wish was to be ignored, then I would not let that stand. I would find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. That evening, I sat by the window, staring out at the darkening sky, the cold wind rustling the bare branches of the trees outside. Memories flooded my mind, Martin as a child, his first day of school, the times we shared holidays and birthdays. Each memory was a thread in the tapestry of my life, now fraying and unraveling. Yet, amidst the sorrow, a spark of resolve flickered within me. I would not be cast aside so easily. The next morning, I quietly began to search through Martin's room, the space he had left behind untouched since his passing. His belongings were neatly arranged as if he might walk through the door at any moment. I sifted through drawers and boxes, hoping for a sign, anything that might explain why Lydia had dismissed me so harshly. Then, hidden beneath a stack of old books, I found an envelope addressed to me in Martin's familiar handwriting. My hands trembled as I carefully opened it, the paper crackling softly in the silence. Inside was a letter, the words painstakingly written, filled with love and care. Martin had made specific requests regarding my future, arrangements he wanted honored, provisions to ensure I would be safe and cared for. He spoke of his wishes for the house, not as a possession to be fought over, but as a place where I could find peace. The letter was a lifeline, a reminder that despite Lydia's bitterness, Martin had thought of me until the very end. A surge of determination swept through me. Lydia's cruel dismissal was not the final word. I would fight to honor Martin's wishes, to reclaim the place in this family that was rightfully mine. The betrayal I felt was deep, but it also fed the fire within me. I would uncover the truth behind Lydia's hostility and ensure that Martin's intentions were respected. This house, these memories, were not just remnants of the past, they were my future. I resolved to speak with those who had known Martin well, friends, colleagues, anyone who might shed light on the decisions he had made. I needed to understand everything, to gather the pieces of the puzzle Lydia seemed desperate to hide. Each step would be difficult, each moment fraught with pain, but I could not let grief render me powerless. Martin's voice, though gone, still guided me. Days passed in a blur of quiet investigation. I met with old neighbors who spoke warmly of Martin's kindness and integrity. I learned that he had been careful, meticulous, ensuring that I would not be left vulnerable. The financial arrangements he had made were complex, and Lydia's actions now looked more like an attempt to seize control than to protect me. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became that the battle ahead would not be just about a house, but about respect, dignity, and the legacy of a son's love for his mother. One afternoon, as I sat at the kitchen table sorting through papers Martin had left behind, Lydia appeared again. Her eyes flickered with something unreadable, a mixture of anger and fear. She said nothing at first, just watched me as if trying to measure my resolve. Then, with a voice low and sharp, she warned, "You're treading on dangerous ground, Clara. Let this go before it's too late." But I was no longer the woman who would quietly accept her fate. I looked up, meeting her gaze steadily. "Martin's wishes are not yours to ignore," I said firmly. "I will find out the truth, and I will make sure he is heard." The tension in the room was thick, but beneath it, I sensed a crack in Lydia's armor. For the first time, I saw vulnerability, and it gave me strength. That night, as I lay awake, the letter from Martin resting on my bedside table, I felt a complex swirl of emotions: grief for the son I had lost, anger at the daughter-in-law who sought to erase me, and a fierce resolve to stand my ground. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with pain, but I knew one thing clearly: I would not be pushed out of the life Martin had wanted for me. Not without a fight. With Martin's letter clutched tightly in my hand, I felt a flicker of hope amidst the suffocating grief. But hope alone would not protect me from the cold reality Lydia was determined to impose. I knew I needed more than just words on paper. I had to uncover every detail of Martin's intentions and expose the truth Lydia was hiding. The house, the memories, and my future depended on it. My first step was to revisit Martin's closest friends, those who had stood by him in life's quieter moments. I called Sarah, his longtime colleague at the law firm. She had always spoken highly of Martin's integrity and kindness, and I hoped she might shed light on any plans he had confided to her. When we met at a small cafe near the office, the warmth of the place contrasted sharply with the cold tension I felt inside. Sarah's eyes filled with sympathy as I explained my situation. "Martin was so protective of you," she said softly, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "He made sure you were taken care of, Clara. I remember him talking about setting up something, some kind of trust or financial arrangement, to make sure you'd be safe no matter what happened." Her voice trembled slightly, as if the reality of his death was still sinking in. She handed me a folder filled with documents Martin had left with her for safekeeping. Among the papers were legal forms, financial statements, and a letter addressed to me, reinforcing what I had already read. The trust Martin had established was more comprehensive than I had imagined. It included provisions for the house, monthly funds for my care, and even instructions for a personal caregiver should I need one. He had meticulously planned for my well-being, a silent guardian even after his passing. The weight of this knowledge was both comforting and infuriating. Lydia's dismissive words now sounded like calculated cruelty, a deliberate attempt to erase Martin's legacy and replace it with her own agenda. I realized I wasn't just fighting for a home, I was fighting for the respect and dignity Martin had fought to secure for me. With renewed determination, I sought out other friends who had been close to Martin. At a quiet park bench, I met Thomas, a longtime family friend and the manager of the construction business Martin had been involved in. Thomas's expression was grave as I explained my mission. "Martin trusted you, Clara. He left the business in your name through the trust. I've been managing it quietly, waiting for the right time to hand over control." His voice was steady but filled with concern. "There's been talk about Wade, your grandson, taking over, but Martin wanted you to have the final say. The revelation struck me deeply. I had always thought Wade would be the natural heir to the family business, but Martin had clearly intended otherwise. Thomas's loyalty to Martin was evident. He had been waiting for me to step forward, to claim what was rightfully mine. This knowledge gave me a new sense of empowerment but also raised the stakes. Lydia's hostility was no longer just about a house, it was about control of an entire legacy. As I pieced together these fragments, a troubling picture emerged. Wade, once a boy I had adored, seemed entangled in debts and poor decisions that Martin had shielded me from. The trust was designed to protect me from any financial fallout, but Lydia and Wade's ambitions threatened to unravel everything Martin had built. The more I learned, the clearer it became that Lydia's cold dismissal was a facade masking greed and desperation. Determined to confront Lydia armed with the truth, I gathered all the documents and evidence I could find. The next time she came into the house, I was ready. Her usual sneer faltered when she saw the folder in my hands. "What is that?" she demanded sharply. Without hesitation, I laid the papers out on the kitchen table, the letter from Martin, the trust documents, and the statements from Sarah and Thomas. "These are Martin's wishes," I said firmly. "He planned for my security and entrusted me with the family business. He wanted me to have this house, this life. You've been hiding the truth." Lydia's composure cracked. Her eyes flashed with anger and panic as she reached for the papers, but I pulled them back gently but firmly. "No," I said. "It's time I take control of my life. Martin's legacy is mine, and I won't let you steal it." Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "You don't know what you're doing, Clara. Wade and I have been trying to keep things together. You're tearing this family apart." I shook my head, the hurt and betrayal washing over me in waves. "You're tearing it apart by denying who I am and what Martin wanted. I loved my son, and I will honor his wishes, even if it means standing against you." The tension in the room was suffocating, but beneath Lydia's hostility, I sensed fear. She knew the strength I had found, the truth I now wielded like a shield. I was no longer the grieving mother crumbling under loss, I was a woman awakening to her own power and fighting for her rightful place. That night, I sat alone in the quiet house, the evidence spread before me like a map leading to justice. I thought about Martin's careful planning, his love hidden behind every signature and clause. It was heartbreaking to realize how much had been kept from me, how close I had come to losing everything. But it also reminded me of the bond we shared, a bond strong enough to transcend death and betrayal. The days that followed were a whirlwind of phone calls, meetings, and consultations. I reached out to a lawyer who specialized in trusts and estates, determined to ensure Martin's wishes would be honored. The legal jargon was overwhelming, but I clung to the clarity of purpose that Martin's letter had given me. This was not just a fight for possessions, it was a fight for respect, for dignity, and for the memory of a son who had loved me fiercely. I also found unexpected support among friends and neighbors who had witnessed the family's struggles. Their quiet encouragement bolstered my resolve, reminding me I was not alone. Lydia's attempts to isolate me had failed, the truth was beginning to surface. Yet, as the battle lines were drawn, I could not ignore the pain that lingered beneath the surface. The house, the documents, the confrontations, they were all reminders of what I had lost. My son was gone, and no amount of legal victory could bring him back. But I knew honoring his wishes was the best way to keep his spirit alive. Each day, I grew stronger, more certain that I was doing what Martin had wanted. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and heartbreak, but I was ready. Lydia's betrayal had ignited a fire within me, a fire that would not be extinguished until justice was served and my son's legacy protected. As I prepared for the next confrontation, I held Martin's letter close, a beacon in the darkness. I was no longer the passive mother waiting for fate to decide my future. I was a woman awakened, ready to reclaim her life and fight for the truth buried beneath years of silence and deceit. The air in the kitchen was thick with tension when Lydia stormed in the next morning, the cold glint in her eyes sharper than ever. I had been waiting for this moment, clutching Martin's letter and the trust documents tightly in my hands, ready to face her with the truth she had tried so hard to bury. The house, once filled with my son's laughter, now echoed with the clash of wills between a grieving mother and a calculating daughter-in-law. "I see you've been digging," Lydia sneered, crossing her arms as she stared down at the papers spread across the table. "Do you really think that letter means anything? You don't understand the business, Clara. Wade and I have been managing everything." Her words were a calculated attempt to undermine me, but I no longer felt the helplessness that had gripped me in the days after Martin's passing. "I understand more than you think," I replied steadily, meeting her gaze without flinching. "Martin entrusted me with the trust, the house, and the business. He made sure I would be protected, even if it meant going against the people closest to him." Lydia's eyes narrowed. "You're so naive. Wade has been working hard to keep this family afloat while you've been sitting here playing the victim." Her voice rose, dripping with resentment. "You don't belong here anymore." The sting of her words was sharp, but beneath her anger, I sensed the fear she was trying to suppress. I held up Martin's letter, the paper trembling slightly in my hand but my voice steady. "Read this. Martin wanted me to have this house, to be cared for, and to control the business if necessary. He made provisions because he knew things wouldn't be easy. But you chose to ignore him." Lydia snatched the letter from my hands, scanning the words quickly. Her facade faltered, her lips tightening as she realized her control was slipping. "This is just a piece of paper," she spat, "and it won't stop me from doing what's best for this family." "Best for the family?" I echoed bitterly. "Is that why you hid Martin's wishes? Why you tried to push me out?" "Martin loved me. He trusted me. And I will honor that, no matter what you say." The room seemed to shrink around us, the once familiar kitchen now a battleground. Lydia's face twisted with frustration, but I stood firm, no longer the grieving woman who had been silenced by loss. I had found my voice, and with it, a fierce determination to reclaim my place. "You don't scare me, Lydia," I said quietly, the words carrying the weight of months of pain and betrayal. "I'm not going anywhere. Martin's legacy isn't yours to control." For a moment, Lydia's eyes glistened with unshed tears, her tough exterior cracking. "You think you're so strong now," she whispered, "but this will tear us all apart." Her voice broke, revealing a vulnerability she had kept hidden. I softened slightly, recognizing the tangled emotions beneath her harshness. "I don't want to tear the family apart," I said gently. "But I won't be erased. Martin loved me, and I owe it to him, and to myself, to stand my ground." She looked away, the fight momentarily draining from her. I sensed that beneath her resentment lay a fear of losing control, of facing the consequences of choices made in the shadows. In the days that followed, I began to take steps to assert my rights more formally. I met with the lawyer Sarah had recommended, a compassionate woman named Elaine who listened patiently as I explained everything. Elaine's calm confidence was a balm to my frayed nerves. She assured me that Martin's trust was legally binding and that I had every right to enforce his wishes. The legal process was daunting, filled with confusing language and unexpected obstacles, but I faced each challenge head-on. Elaine helped me draft letters to Lydia and Wade, outlining my intentions and the legal standing I held. It was a delicate balance, standing firm without burning bridges I might need in the future. Meanwhile, Lydia's resistance grew more desperate. She questioned every move I made, shadowing my meetings and sending thinly veiled threats through Wade. Yet with each confrontation, I felt my resolve harden. I was no longer the passive woman overwhelmed by grief, I was a mother fighting for her son's legacy and her own dignity. One afternoon, Thomas stopped by, bringing with him an air of quiet support. "Wade's been trying to pressure me to side with him," he confided, "but I can't go against Martin's wishes. You have my loyalty, Clara." His words were a lifeline, reminding me that I was not alone in this battle. With Thomas's help, I gained access to the business's financial records. What I found was troubling: debts accrued by Wade, decisions that could jeopardize the company's future. Martin had been protecting me from this, structuring the trust to shield me from financial harm. Now, it was clear why Lydia and Wade wanted me out. Control of the business meant control of its debts and profits. Armed with this knowledge, I confronted Lydia again. Martin's trust isn't just about the house or money, it's about protecting me from harm you and Wade could cause. I won't let that happen. Her eyes flashed with anger. You're trying to destroy the family, she accused. I shook my head. I'm trying to save it, from greed and betrayal. Martin believed in me. It's time you did too. The confrontation left Lydia momentarily speechless, her facade cracked but not broken. I knew this was far from over, but I also knew I had crossed a line. I was no longer a silent victim but a force to be reckoned with. In the quiet moments afterward, I reflected on how far I had come. The grief was still there, an ache beneath every victory, but so was a newfound strength. Martin's love and foresight had given me the tools to fight, and I was no longer afraid to use them. I began to rebuild not just my life but my identity. No longer just a mother mourning her son, I was a woman reclaiming her voice, her rights, and her place in the family. Each step forward was a tribute to Martin's memory and a promise to myself that I would never be pushed aside again. As I prepared for the next phase of this painful journey, I held Martin's letter close, drawing strength from his words and the love they carried. The path was uncertain and fraught with challenges, but I was ready to face whatever came next, with courage, conviction, and the unshakable belief that I deserved to be heard. The day I walked into the lawyer's office, clutching the thick folder of documents, I felt a mixture of anxiety and determination settle deep in my chest. Elaine greeted me with a warm smile, her calm presence a balm to the storm that had been raging inside me for months. She listened intently as I recounted the story, Martin's letter, the trust, Lydia's hostility, and my fight to honor my son's wishes. Clara, Elaine said softly, the trust Martin set up is legally sound. We have a strong case to ensure his wishes are respected. Her words offered a fragile thread of hope in the labyrinth of grief and betrayal I was navigating. The legal process moved steadily, though not without resistance. Lydia and Wade's lawyers pushed back at every turn, questioning the validity of the trust and casting doubt on my intentions. It felt like a battle fought not just in court but in the very heart of the family I once trusted. The hearings were emotionally draining, each session reopening wounds I was desperate to heal. One afternoon, during a particularly tense session, I glanced across the room to see Lydia sitting stiffly, her face a mask of defiance. But beneath her steely exterior, I sensed a flicker of defeat. The evidence was undeniable, the documents, witness testimonies, and Martin's clear instructions painted a picture that no court could ignore. Outside the courthouse, Elaine reassured me. We're making progress, Clara. This is about more than property or money. It's about honoring a son's love and a mother's rightful place. The emotional toll was immense. I found myself retreating often into quiet reflection, grappling with the pain of losing Martin and the betrayal of those I had once considered family. Nights were the hardest, the silence of the house amplifying my loneliness. Yet, amidst the sorrow, I clung to the knowledge that I was fighting for something sacred. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Lydia reached out. Her call came as I was sorting through Martin's belongings, the sound of her voice strange and tentative. Clara, she said hesitantly, I want to talk. When we met, the conversation was cautious. Lydia's eyes held regret she had long buried. I was wrong to shut you out, she admitted quietly. I was scared, of losing control, of facing the truth. But I see now that Martin wanted you respected. Her apology was tentative, a fragile bridge over the chasm between us. I listened, my heart aching with the complexity of forgiveness. The wounds were deep, and while I longed for reconciliation, I knew healing would take time. Thank you for saying that, I replied softly. But right now, I need to focus on my own healing. The days that followed were a delicate dance between legal battles and personal recovery. Elaine guided me through the final stages of the case, ensuring that Martin's wishes would be legally upheld. The court's decision affirmed my rights to the house, the trust, and control over the business. It was a victory tinged with bittersweet relief. With the legal obstacles behind me, I began to rebuild my life on my terms. The house, once a symbol of loss and conflict, slowly transformed into a sanctuary of hope and renewal. I found solace in small routines, tending the garden Martin loved, cooking meals in the kitchen where we had once shared laughter, and sitting by the window watching the seasons change. The experience reshaped my understanding of family, love, and strength. I realized that loyalty was not blind obedience but a commitment to truth and respect. Martin's love had been the foundation, but it was my courage and resolve that carried me forward. Though Lydia and I remained distant, the tentative steps toward amends reminded me that even fractured relationships could hold the possibility of healing. I chose to prioritize my peace and independence, knowing that forgiveness was a journey, not a destination. In the quiet moments of reflection, I often thought of Martin, his voice, his smile, the kindness that had defined him. Honoring his legacy meant more than legal victories, it meant living authentically, embracing the strength he had inspired in me. As I settled into this new chapter, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The path had been arduous, marked by pain and betrayal, but it had also revealed my resilience and the enduring power of love. Martin's wishes had guided me through the darkness, lighting the way toward a future where I could finally breathe freely and stand tall. Each day was a step forward, a testament to the bond between mother and son that death could not sever. The journey was far from over, but I carried with me the unwavering belief that I was exactly where I was meant to be, honoring the past while embracing the promise of tomorrow. The countryside cottage was everything I had dreamed of and more, a quiet refuge nestled among rolling green hills, far from the turmoil that had consumed my life. Martin had left it to me in his trust, a gift meant to be a new beginning rather than a reminder of loss. As I unpacked the last box in the sunlit living room, a sense of peace settled over me, unfamiliar yet deeply welcome. The cottage felt alive with possibility. The walls, painted a gentle cream, seemed to breathe warmth into every corner. Outside, the garden bloomed with wildflowers Martin had loved, their colors vivid against the soft blue sky. I stood on the porch with a cup of tea, letting the gentle breeze carry away years of pain and uncertainty. This was more than a home, it was a symbol of the journey I had taken. From the depths of grief and betrayal to the empowerment I had fought so hard to claim. Here, I was not just a widow or a mother haunted by loss, I was a woman who had reclaimed her life on her own terms. The days settled into a comforting rhythm. I began volunteering at a local support center for grieving families, sharing my story with those navigating the jagged edges of loss and family conflict. Each conversation was a reminder that I was not alone, and that my experience could offer hope and strength to others. The center became a place of healing, not just for those I helped but for myself as well. One afternoon, as I led a group discussion, a young woman approached me afterwards. Her eyes were red from crying, but they held a spark of determination. "Thank you," she said softly. "Your story gives me courage to fight for my own rights." Her words touched something deep inside me, the knowledge that my pain had transformed into purpose. I realized that the battles I had faced were not just personal trials but part of a larger struggle many women endure. I was no longer a passive victim but an advocate, a beacon for those whose voices had been silenced. Back at the cottage, I found joy in small things, a book by the window, the scent of fresh bread baking in the oven, the laughter of neighbors who had become friends. The community embraced me, not as the woman who had lost a son but as someone who had found strength in adversity. Financial stability, once a distant hope, became a reality as I took the reins of the family business Martin had entrusted to me. With Thomas's guidance, we steered the company away from the brink, restoring its reputation and securing its future. Each successful venture was a tribute to Martin's foresight and my determination to honor his legacy. Yet, even as I rebuilt, memories of the past lingered, a bittersweet reminder of the love that had shaped me. I often found myself writing letters to Martin, words flowing from my heart in a quiet conversation that comforted the ache of absence. In these letters, I expressed gratitude for his protection and hope for the years ahead. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of pink and gold, I sat on the porch with a glass of wine. The world felt vast and full of possibility. I thought about the journey, the betrayal that had cut deep, the fight that had awakened me, and the peace I had found. I realized that understanding my financial rights had been the key to reclaiming not just my home but my dignity. I had learned to distinguish between love that nurtures and demands, between family that supports and family that takes for granted. And most importantly, I had learned to stand tall in the face of adversity. The future stretched before me, uncertain but filled with promise. I was free from the burdens of the past, empowered by the knowledge that I could face whatever came next. As the stars began to twinkle above, I whispered a silent thank you to Martin, knowing that his love would always guide me. In this new chapter, I was no longer defined by loss but by resilience and hope. The cottage was my sanctuary, the community my family, and my life a testament to the strength that lies within us all when we refuse to be silenced. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.